Here's a growl. Just this.
Me, my brother, and my father, we were driving. My dad, he suddenly said, "Look over there." And I look over, and I'm like...
For centuries, legends of Bigfoot have captivated our imagination, an elusive giant lurking deep within the wilderness. Tonight, we uncover chilling encounters captured on camera and told by eyewitnesses. From haunting growls in dense forests to mysterious signs of communication, these stories challenge what we know about the natural world. Join us as we face the unknown and question the truth behind the myth. Is Bigfoot real or just a legend? Footage courtesy Travel Channel. According to some Bigfoot researchers, this could be a mysterious form of communication, suggesting a level of intelligence still unknown to us. In the thick silence of the forest, strange and unidentifiable sounds began to echo from every direction. The group grew tense, senses sharpening as an unsettling atmosphere took hold. One member, caught between curiosity and apprehension, whispered, "What is happening here?" Lost in the eerie vocalists, a quiet panic crept in. Suddenly, a voice broke through the tension, urging the others to listen closely. "It's communicating with us," they said. "Let's try this."
We start hearing things go on all around us. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, what's going on here?
I was so in my own world, listening to everything and sort of like in a panic.
All at once, out of nowhere, a low growl rose from the darkness. It came suddenly and unbidden, deep, resonant, and chilling. "Do you hear that?" someone whispered, their voice trembling. "I heard a growl." To them, it sounded almost demonic. What unseen force was making its presence known in the darkness?
And all of a sudden, from nowhere, here's a growl. Just this. I said, "Did you hear that?"
I heard a growl.
Excitement mixed with fear, but they didn't realize how dangerous things really were. They were walking straight into a darkness deeper than they could imagine.
It was a lot of excitement, a lot of fear, and I hadn't really thought out the dangers of what I was getting myself into.
They suddenly went wild, unleashing sounds that were primal and animalistic in nature. The growls rumbled deep and low, filled with a raw, guttural power that echoed through the night. Each roar was loud and aggressive, vibrating through the air like a warning. What old creature was hiding in the dark, growling to warn them to leave, not wanting to be seen? The eerie vocalists were so intense and unnatural that it gripped everyone with a terrifying sense of dread. The bone-chilling noises seemed to reach into their very bones, leaving them frozen with fear.
They're very animalistic sounding. They were real low and really growly and really loud.
Just the sound that they were making was terrifying. I mean, it was...
Mike warned his team to move quietly and keep your pace steady. Running will only trigger the hunt. This is no ordinary creature, it's a predator. If we take off, there's no chance of survival.
Walk slowly, don't run, okay? If we run, this thing will chase us. This thing is a predator. If we run, we're dead.
They heard heavy stomping approaching. Fast, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Each thundering footfall shook the ground beneath them, echoing through the trees like a warning of something dark and unstoppable closing in.
And you could hear each heavy footfall as it just came rushing, just loud footsteps. I was like, oh my.
The creature was furious. It wanted them gone, driven out of its territory. The feeling was raw and overwhelming, pure, unfiltered fear. Footage courtesy Animal Planet. Investigator Cliff Barkman was drawn to a remote spot after a young girl named Honey reported a startling encounter with a Sasquatch while her father was driving. According to her father, who was currently unreachable, he had witnessed 4 of the elusive creatures. Determined to uncover the truth, Cliff arranged to meet with Honey and her mother to hear their story firsthand. Cliff asked the girl, "Tell me exactly what happened that day."
Honey saw a Sasquatch while her father was driving. Her father actually saw 4 of them, but he's not available. So I'm going to meet with Honey and her mother instead. Boy, this is a long ways from Big Bear Lake.
It is.
This is where it all happened then, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
But let me get this straight. Your father actually is the one who initially saw them, is that right?
Yeah.
How did your father first spot the Sasquatches, and what did you see? The girl named Honey described the moment as if it happened yesterday. "We were driving, me, my brother, and my dad, when out of nowhere, my dad pointed and said, 'Look there!' I turned just in time to see something incredible. We kept going, but when we returned, it had disappeared, leaving nothing behind but questions. What really lurks in that place? The answers are still out there. Or was it truly a Sasquatch? The mystery remains."
Me, my brother, and my father, we were driving. My dad, he suddenly said, "Look over there." And I look over and I'm like, whoa. We just kept going up. And then when we came back, it wasn't there.
What did you think after that? Like, what was going on in your head?
Cliff leaned in slightly, his voice low. After that moment, what was going through your mind? What did you think you saw? Honey, a California Bigfoot witness, spoke with a voice slightly as she remembered. "I was scared. I had no idea what it was. I just kept asking myself, what did we just see?" I looked at my dad, and when I asked him, he said, "It might have been a Bigfoot, but not like a joke, like he actually meant it." She paused, then added, "My brother looked shaken too. All he said was, 'Maybe,' like he didn't want to believe it, but he saw it too." The uncertainty hung in the air. Whatever they saw, none of them could explain it. Whatever Honey had seen was positioned against the rock face, providing a useful point of reference for scale.
There.
What did you think after that? Like, what was going on in your head?
I was like, what was that? What could have it been? And then I asked my dad, what was that? And then he said, a Bigfoot probably. And my brother was like, me?
Cliff positioned himself in the same spot so Honey could indicate just how large the figure appeared to be. She explained that the creature's head barely extended into the middle of that green shrub behind her, just about that high. It was enough to make her realize how tall and imposing it truly was.
I think the head went just a little bit in the middle of that shrub behind you, that green one.
Okay.
Just went about that high.
Well, if it was standing right here.
Cliff estimated that if the creature had been standing right there, its head would have towered around 7.5 to 8 feet high. She said the body was at least that wide, big enough to wrap your arms around, but still kind of scary to think about. It was tall, silent, and gone in an instant. No tracks, no evidence, just a memory burned into their minds. So what really walked that road? And where did it go? Footage courtesy DMAX UK. A significant number of sightings were reported during the meeting, all of which were carefully reviewed. While each account was considered, 3 stood out due to their credibility and consistency. These cases have been prioritized for further investigation. With those identified, Cliff and his team have finalized the investigative plan established.
Tremendous number of sightings that came forth during this meeting. We listened to every single witness. However, 3 of them really stood out to us, and those are the ones we want to investigate.
Well, we've got our plan figured out then.
I think we do. Boy, was that a lot. But
Man, so many
it's
reports.
good.
Today, Cliff is going to meet with Chief Little Soldier, the Ohio Bigfoot witness at the Muncie, Delaware Indian Reservation. Bigfoot has been seen around this area for several years. Chief Little Soldier says he hears them often and sometimes finds their footprints nearby. Is this the place where most of the Bigfoot activity has been happening lately? Cliff asks. Yes, Chief Little Soldier replies. We've had all kinds of strange things going on here.
This particular reservation has had Bigfoots visiting it for several years now. Chief Little Soldier says that he hears them on a fairly regular basis and even finds footprints around. This is the property where most of the Bigfoot action has been happening lately?
Yes, we've had all kind of activity.
Native Americans have been living with the land and with Sasquatches for as long as they've been on this continent.
Chief Little Soldier described the moment clearly. He was right there, marking trails when he suddenly heard the sharp crack of a branch breaking nearby. "I looked up and saw this enormous creature standing not far from me," he explained. It was staring straight at him, really huge, bigger than anything he'd ever seen. Before he could react, the creature turned and sprinted down the side of the ravine with incredible speed. He tried to chase after it, but there was no way he could keep up. It was too fast.
Is this the spot?
This is the spot. I was putting in trail markers, and I heard this branch break. I saw a creature that was immensely huge looking back at me. It took off down the side of the ravine. I ran toward it. There was no way I would have any chance of catching up with it.
Oh, wow. Now, how fast do you think would you say it was going?
Renee and Matt, the BFRO field researcher, traveled to Sharon, Ohio to meet Lorena Cunningham, the woman at the center of a strange and unsettling encounter from 1984. According to her story, while at a playground with her children, she came face to face with a female Bigfoot, an experience that would haunt her ever since. The details of that day remained vivid, shrouded in both fear and disbelief, as Lorena recounted what no one else could explain.
Renee and I are headed down to Sharon, Ohio to meet with Lorena Cunningham. She's the one who had that incident in 1984 where she was out with her kids at a playground and a female Bigfoot came to the edge of the tree line and she had a standoff.
This was the spot. Lorena Cunningham's finger trembled as she pointed toward the merry-go-round, her voice barely more than a whisper. Her children had been laughing on the swings just moments before, but had suddenly scattered, drawn to the spinning ride when everything changed. From deep within the shadowed woods came a sudden crash, the unmistakable sound of heavy branches snapping under a rapid, forceful movement. Then, stepping slowly into the fading light, a massive, hairy creature emerged. Its eyes, glowing with an eerie intelligence, locked onto hers. Frozen in place, Lorena's heart hammered as terror washed over her. She couldn't move, couldn't scream, caught in the creature's silent, unblinking gaze. The air thickened with an otherworldly stillness, as if time itself held its breath. What had she just seen? Was this a forgotten legend come alive, or something darker lurking in the shadows? And as night began to fall, would she ever feel safe near the woods again?
The big hairy creature was looking down at me. I was paralyzed.
Next, they are heading back to the Salt Fork area to meet Tim Stover, a hunter who had a chilling encounter from his tree stand right around this time of year. What he saw up there still haunts him, and it's a story you won't want to miss. Tim sat motionless in his tree stand, the night wrapping around him like a heavy, suffocating blanket. The forest was eerily quiet, every sound swallowed by an unnatural stillness. Then, without warning, a sharp snap cracked through the darkness, coming from just past his 2 o'clock. The sound was so close, so deliberate, it made his blood run cold. At first, Tim told himself it was just a deer, some animal brushing through the undergrowth, but the weight of the silence pressed down harder, and a deep, creeping fear began to take hold. He could feel eyes, cold, relentless eyes, locked onto him from the shadows.
That tree right here, 20 years ago in 1992 is where it all happened. I was up in the tree stand. I could hear a stick break to my 2 o'clock position. I thought, well, it's got to be a deer moving through there.
As Tim's eyes drifted toward the shadows, the creature was standing there, motionless and watching. The sight of it sent a wave of fear crashing over him. He had always believed Bigfoots were supposed to be black, but this one was different. Its fur was the color of a coyote, silvery, grayish, almost whitish. What was it really? Footage courtesy Salish Sasquatch. Mike Leone, a resident of Portland, Oregon, reported seeing a Sasquatch at this location on September 28, 2012. An experience he describes as unforgettable and unlike anything he had ever seen before.
Hi, I'm Mike Leone. I'm from Portland, Oregon. And on September 28th, 2012, I saw a Sasquatch right here.
The moment Mike sat up, something caught his eye. So a sudden movement to his left. Just ahead, on the quiet stretch of road, a towering figure was walking away. It was unmistakable, broad-shouldered, upright, and moving with a steady, purposeful stride. He realized he was watching a Sasquatch. Though the sighting lasted only a few seconds, he was able to observe the creature from behind before it disappeared around a bend in the road and slipped out of view. The encounter was brief, but powerful. It left him with a vivid image he would never forget.
As soon as I sat up, I caught movement to my left. And right there on that road, there's a Sasquatch walking away. I only saw it from the back for a few seconds. Walked away around that bend and right out of view.
The sighting occurred right around this spot. He estimated the creature to be approximately 6.5 to 7 feet tall, with dark brown hair and an extremely broad muscular build. What stood out most was its thick frame, and the apparent lack of a visible neck. Its shoulders and striated muscles seemed to connect directly to the head. He also noted that it walked with a slight forward lean, roughly 5 degrees, giving its movement a distinct and deliberate appearance.
It was right about here, I saw it, and I would say it is about 6.5 to 7 feet, dark brown, very broad-shouldered, thick, and it definitely appears like they have no neck, just the way their shoulders and trapezes are built. And they definitely walk with about a 5-degree lean forward.
Shane, an experienced camper familiar with the remote woods of the region, would never forget what happened that night. He and his 2 friends, Mitch and Adlan, had set up camp deep in the forest to 3 tents, spaced apart, each of them alone under the canopy of darkness. The night had been quiet, until something began moving just beyond their camp. From inside his tent, Shane heard it, slow, heavy footsteps crunching through the underbrush, circling them. Twigs snapped under its weight, loud and intentional. But it wasn't just the footsteps. Sharp cracks echoed through the trees, wood breaking, limbs snapping. He couldn't tell whether the creature was knocking branches off trees or crushing them beneath its feet. Whatever it was, it stayed hidden, just outside the glow of their lanterns, close enough to hear, but never close enough to see.
And then I heard something marching around above our camp. You know, we had 3 tents set up, 3 of us each in our separate tents, and it was kind of circling our camp and breaking sticks. You know, at the time I couldn't tell if it was smacking things off of trees or stepping on them.
And I heard right away shuffling around my tent. And then the sides of the tent started to shake.
At first, all he saw was movement of faint shadows shifting in the darkness. But then, his eyes caught something unmistakable. A large hand gripping the front of a tree, swinging slowly back and forth. It repeated the motion several times, revealing more, and it saw a cluster of fingers curling tightly around the bark, a powerful arm, broad shoulders, and a head outlined against the night. The figure was dark in color, so dark he couldn't distinguish its exact shade, though he assumed it was black. Was it simply a trick of the light, or was something truly watching from the shadows? What do you think? Was this glimpse proof of something real lurking just beyond our sight? Footage courtesy Wild Man of the Woods. It was a warm summer night, the kind where the heat lingered in the air long after the sun had set. The witness was in Pennsylvania, and that night would mark the first time something strange occurred. He had spent the evening at a friend's house. They played video games for hours on an old Atari console, laughing and shouting as the screen flickered with pixelated action. In his hands, he carried a Star Wars toy blaster, the kind used by the white armored stormtroopers in the movies. It was made of plastic, a bit worn from use, and required large C batteries to function. A small spinning mechanism in the front would light up and make sounds when the trigger was pulled. The noise it produced was something like pew pew pew, just like in the films.
It was a summer night, Pennsylvania. It was warm, after dark. So I'd been up at a friend's house. He had an Atari. We were playing video games. And I had one of those Star Wars blasters that the stormtroopers had. Took C batteries in the front of it. You know, had a little cylinder that spun and it made this like noises, something like that.
At that moment, it was more of a feeling, like something wasn't right. The man couldn't explain it exactly, but it hit him all at once, like walking into a wall. Then came the smell, strong and sudden. He remembered it clearly. It was sharp, thick, and heavy, like a wet dog mixed with something rotten, with a hint of sulfur. the kind of smell that made his stomach twist.
Like there was something wrong, or the smell, because I remember catching a smell and it was like a wall, and it was like wet dog, sulfury rot.
There were always a lot of deer in the area, which meant plenty of roadkill. Deer, raccoons, possums. The smell of dead animals wasn't unusual, but this was something else. A whole other level of smell. Stronger, heavier, and unlike anything he'd ever smelled before.
Definitely, and I smelled skunks before. I'd smelled, we had a lot of deer, so a lot of roadkill deer, a lot of roadkill raccoons and possums. This was something, another level of smell that unlike anything I'd ever smelled before.
In the silence, something to his right suddenly broke through the stillness. At first, his brain tried to make sense of it. It sounded like a truck crashing down the hill, snapping branches on the way, hitting hard with a series of deep booms. Boom, boom. There was something off about the sound. Heavy, chaotic, and strange. It didn't feel right. It had an eerie tone, like it didn't belong there.
At that time, in my brain, I thought it was a truck just falling down that hill and busting tree branches and boom, boom, boom.
Have you ever seen something so big, so strange, that your brain couldn't make sense of it? He couldn't see a face, just a dark shape standing in the trees, a silhouette. But even from a distance, he knew it was the biggest human-like figure he had ever laid eyes on. It wasn't a bear. He could tell that right away. The body was all wrong. It was tall, covered in hair, and built like a wall. Broad shoulders, no real neck, just a small head resting on top. And then, it moved. It walked. Was it just a legend the Sasquatch people have whispered about for generations? Or was it something far more real and far more terrifying?
And I couldn't make out a face. It was a silhouette, but it was the biggest human-like thing I'd ever seen. I could tell that it was hairy. I could tell that it wasn't a bear. The shoulders, it had like no neck. It was just a little bit of a head and these broad shoulders, and it walked. And it took a step, and then I heard it going up the other bank. By the second or third noise of either a foot or a hand going in, the next day I would see.
The next morning, with the owner of a nearby dairy farm beside him, he returned to the spot where he had encountered the strange creature. The woods were silent, still holding that uneasy feeling from the night before, and that's when they saw them. Footprints, clear as day. On one side of the creek bank, deep toe prints were pressed into the damp earth. On the other side, a single heel print, heavy and wide, and in between, deep gashes in the earth, long, deep, and torn through the ground, as if something massive had leapt across in one powerful bound. Whatever it was, it had left more than fear behind. It had left proof. Footage courtesy Sasquatch Mafia. Dr. John Bindernagel was a respected wildlife biologist and a former advisor to the United Nations. After spending more than a decade examining tracks, eyewitness reports, and field evidence, he had arrived at one startling conclusion. While others laughed or looked the other way, Dr. Bindernagel kept following the evidence, no matter where it led. He acknowledges the existence of the Sasquatch as a real yet elusive mammal believed to inhabit the remote wilderness areas of North America.
I accept the Sasquatch as an existing North American mammal. The long arms, and certainly the flat face, lacking the prominent snout of the bear. There'll often be deep-set eyes, brow ridges maybe. The flat nose, often with outward-facing nostrils, thin lips, ears almost always covered with hair, broad shoulder.
People who say they've seen it describe a creature with long arms and a flat face, not like a bear's, which has a big snout. Its eyes sit deep under thick brow bones, and its nose is flat with nostrils that point outward. The lips are thin, and its ears are usually hidden under thick hair. It has wide, strong-looking shoulders, giving it a big and powerful build.
People encounter Sasquatches, if not on a weekly basis in North America, every month.
I couldn't believe what I was looking at.
Dr. Bean noticed, if this dip along the edge is real and not just caused by weather or damage, it clearly looks different from the other footprints. That makes us ask an important question. What made this one different? Was the creature standing or moving differently? Was the ground softer in that spot? Or did its foot land in a different way?
If this depression along this edge here is real, it's different from those other footprints. So why is it different from those other footprints?
Dr. Nina Jablonski, a respected biological anthropologist, has noted, in forested environments, large animals, especially great apes such as gorillas and chimpanzees, were routinely observed constructing night nests to sleep in and ensure their safety. These nests, typically made from branches and foliage, were built either on the ground or in trees and served as a consistent behavioral marker of their presence. However, in the regions where sightings and reports of Bigfoot have been most commonly claimed, no physical evidence of such night nests was ever discovered. This absence raises questions, as one would expect a similarly large, forest-dwelling primate, if it existed, to exhibit comparable nesting behavior.
Animals, when large apes live in a forest, they routinely make night nests in which to sleep and to be secure. We've never, in the areas in which Bigfoot is said to have lived, ever found anything like a night nest.
Renowned for his Oscar-winning work in special effects makeup, Dick Smith was professionally active during the period when the infamous Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film first emerged into public view. Look closely at how the nose projects outward, positioned exactly where a human nose would typically be. It appears pale and distinct, making it easy to spot. The dome of the head rises quite high, though much of its shape is concealed beneath a thick layer of hair that helps it blend into its surroundings. The soles of the feet aren't pure white, but show a light, solid tone that subtly contrasts with the darker fur around them. If this was simply a costume, would we expect to see such natural-looking anatomical details? Footage courtesy, small-town monster. The investigator claimed that when a reference point such as a tree or a branch was available near where a Bigfoot had reportedly been seen, investigators could return to the location and take accurate measurements. However, it had been observed that many eyewitnesses were often inaccurate when estimating distance, height, or weight. Most people, after all, weren't trained in measuring such things. As one researcher noted, not everyone plays golf for a living. A golfer might easily say, "That's 120 yards," but the average person would struggle to judge such distances accurately.
If you have a reference point, the Bigfoot standing by a tree or a branch, you can go back and measure it. I will tell you this, so many witnesses are off on distance and height and weight. A lot of us don't play golf for a living. You know, a golfer can tell you, oh, it was 120 yards.
When researchers return to the sighting location and take precise measurements, they often find that the reported Bigfoot was actually much larger than originally estimated. In many cases, the creature was also farther away than witnesses had believed at the time.
Sometimes it's further away even than what they estimate. So yeah, it gives us a good reference point if they're standing by something like a tree.
Jay Keaton is a Bigfoot researcher based in Kentucky and a member of the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, KBRO. He is known for conducting field investigations and collecting audio evidence related to Sasquatch activity in the region. As part of KBRO, Keaton helps investigate sightings, interview witnesses, and gather evidence to better understand Bigfoot presence in Kentucky. Jay shared a story about her friend and the friend's brother who were driving in a truck near the area where Jay Keaton had conducted his research. As they passed through a section of the road bordered by dense trees, they spotted a large, mysterious creature standing quietly in the tree line. Neither of them spoke at the moment, unsure if the other had seen it too. Later, they cautiously confirmed that they both witnessed the same unusual figure, but neither wanted to admit it initially for fear of being labeled as crazy. When they returned to the area later, the creature had vanished without a trace. What do you think they saw that day? Was it really something unexplained, or could there be another explanation?
I have a friend that lives nearby here who, her and her brother were in a truck traveling where you stayed, just down from there, and in the tree line stood one of these creatures. And as they drove by it, they seen it. They didn't say anything. And they later on said, okay, did you see what I seen? And yes,
Another researcher reported that he initially discovered the site in July of the previous year. Significantly, just down the ridge and directly within the line of sight was his friend's tree stand, carefully positioned facing toward the location. This alignment suggested a potential vantage point for observing activity in the area, possibly linked to the sighting described by Jay's friends. At first glance, it might seem like just a random cluster of branches, but upon closer examination, the investigator noticed something unusual. What stood out as particularly interesting was that many of the branches had been bent but not broken. They appeared to have been carefully flexed to a certain point without snapping. Additionally, several sticks had been deliberately placed around the structure. It seemed as though the limbs were bent downward and then secured in place by leaning other sticks against them. The overall arrangement suggested a surprising level of creativity. Its location, just beyond the ridge from where Jay's friends had their encounter, raises a chilling possibility. Was this the result of a natural force, or a sign that something intelligent, and possibly the very creature they saw, was still out there, watching?
Well, if you look at this closely, what's really interesting is all these branches are not broke. They're bent to the point, but not to where they're broken. And all of these right here, sticks have been added to this. You can walk around, so it's like they bent it down and they lean all these sticks around it to keep the limbs down.
Footage, courtesy of Flash, of Beauty Bigfoot Revealed. This is the story of Tara Harris, a mother, a psychic, and a woman who never set out to find Bigfoot. She believed in spirits, she had spoken with them, helped them cross over, and assisted grieving families. Ghosts were part of her reality, but Bigfoot? That was something she had never considered until one day in the mountains when her world expanded in ways she couldn't have imagined. Tara grew up in the woods surrounded by nature. Her grandfather, a logger, spent much of his life in the forests. After his passing, she claimed his spirit guided her, urging her to continue spiritual work in a sacred spot in the mountains. According to Tara, this wasn't just any place. It was one of a few rare sites in the world where negative energy couldn't interfere with the work of clearing spirits. It was there, during a routine visit, that she came face to face with something she could never forget.
But when Grandpa passed away, he told us to come up and go to the mountains and do, there's a sacred spot up here that we can work, and it's different than any other spot. There's several of them in the world, but you have to have that one spot. It keeps the bad energy out so you can focus on the good energy. So he basically just told us which.
She and a friend were in the middle of a clearing when they heard a noise. Turning, they froze. Just 20 feet away stood a massive figure, hairy, towering, and silent. It was Bigfoot. For a moment, fear gripped them. Neither had expected to see anything like this. But the creature did not charge, did not throw rocks, did not growl. It only stood there, watching. Then, in an instant, it vanished, slipping away so quietly, it was as if it dissolved into the forest itself. That first sighting changed everything. From then on, Tara returned to the spot weekly. Soon, strange phenomena began. Knocking sounds echoed around them, circling faster than any human could move. At first, she thought it was Bigfoot, but through her spiritual connection, she claimed she learned otherwise. The knocking, she said, came from another being, one that shared Bigfoot's ability to slip between dimensions, often creating distractions while Bigfoot himself moved unseen.
Up here, just doing a regular thing when we saw Bigfoot. We were up here doing a clearing one day, and we heard a noise, and we looked over, and it wasn't like 20 feet away, and he was standing there. And he's just standing there staring at us, and it scared us because we didn't know there were any here, and we'd never seen one or never even thought they existed, whether they did or they didn't. So it was kind of scary at first, but then we realized that he's just looking at us. He isn't being aggressive. He's not throwing things at us or anything. So we kind of looked at him, then he went, we talked about it. So we looked at each other, and we looked back, he was gone. Didn't make a noise, nothing.
In the weeks that followed, Tara began to see more. Not just one figure, but a family. A towering male, a female, a smaller adolescent, and even a child. They appeared sometimes in the woods, other times only in her mind's eye. Through what she described as telepathic contact, she said she learned their true name, Aylyn, spelled A-Y-L-Y-N. To them, the term Bigfoot was offensive, a crude label. They were not monsters, but beings with intelligence, families, and even culture. According to Tara, Aylyn showed her glimpses of their world. She described their dimension as similar to ours, but subtly different. Trees of unfamiliar shapes, great crystal pillars that hummed with energy, and landscapes that felt both alien and familiar. One day, she even claimed the male left her a physical gift, a stone shaped like a footprint, unlike anything she had seen before.
And so we've seen, he actually left a piece of that for me, and in the shape of his foot, actually, which is kind of cool. And I had brought my daughters up one time, and she didn't know anything about it. We hadn't talked about them with her, and she saw them too. And she gave the exact description. The little kid, the medium one, and the female and the male. And she saw them up in the trees behind where we had seen them.
Her daughter, unaware of her mother's experiences, later reported seeing the same figures, describing the child, the female, and the tall male in exact detail. That confirmation cemented Tara's conviction. She wasn't imagining this. In her accounts, Aylyn told her of their history with humans. Long ago, they lived openly alongside Native Americans, exchanging energy through touch, communicating without words. But now, they fear humans. They were hunted, distrusted, and forced into secrecy. Only those with a certain energy, a light that Tara believed they could sense, were chosen for contact.
What they've told me is that there are others, and they're like people. They tried to explain it. They showed me in a way like with people, there's bad ones and there's good ones. It's the same for them. There's bad ones. They come from the same place, but there are bad ones and there are good ones. Most are good. They tried to make it clear that they're not out there to hurt anybody, but there are some that are violent. So they tried to show that there are violent people. There are also violent Bigfoot, just like there are good ones.
For Tara, the encounters were life-changing. She said the Aylyn cared for the forests, mourned the damage caused by humans, and feared the fires that destroyed their food sources. They were not from this planet, she believed, but had always been tied to it, guardians in the shadows. They don't want to hurt us, she explained. Most of them just want to live. But like people, some are good, and some are not. The lesson Tara took was simple but profound. These beings reveal themselves only to those with respect. If you go into the forest seeking to exploit them, you'll never see them. But if you go in peace, you might just discover that the mystery of Bigfoot is far stranger and far deeper than anyone ever imagined. Footage courtesy Animal Planet. In a region not typically associated with Bigfoot sightings, reports are flooding in, and judging by the number of hands raised, something unusual is happening here. A man recalls his strange encounter just north of town in a small area called Ridgeville. It was early morning, still dark, and he was doing his usual paper route, driving alone along a quiet road. As he came around a corner and pulled up to a mailbox to drop off a newspaper, something unexpected happened. A large figure stepped out near the edge of the road, right in front of his car. At first, he wasn't sure what he was looking at, but as it turned to face him, he saw it clearly. The creature was huge. He said its shoulders were extremely wide, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It stood tall, silent, and still.
It occurred in a town north of me in Ridgeville. I was delivering newspapers real early in the morning, and I was driving around the corner, and I come up to a tube to put the paper in, and I saw this thing. Turned around, looked at me, and it was big. I mean, it had shoulders were at least like this.
Then it locked eyes with him. He described the feeling of that eye contact as deeply unsettling. He didn't just feel watched, he felt like the creature was angry, like he had interrupted something he wasn't supposed to see. His hands were shaking. Since fear is already shown, his hands were shaking on the wheel. Even after putting distance between himself and the creature, he couldn't calm down. To this day, he remembers the look in its eyes and the feeling that whatever it was, it didn't want to be seen.
Just freaked me out because I got the feeling that it was kind of angry. I was like disturbing it kind of, and I just floored it and got out of there. I was kind of shaken up.
But what was it? Why was it there, alone, in the dark, standing in the middle of a quiet road no one else was on? Was it just passing through? Or has it been here all along, watching from the woods? The man never went back to that route again, and he's not the only one with a story. What hides in the shadows just beyond Ridgeville? Not far from Ridgeville, another local resident shares a chilling story of his own encounter. This witness, a longtime hunter, recalls a night deep in the woods when something unusual crossed his path. Unlike the man's sighting near the road, this one happened far from any signs of civilization. The hunter described hearing heavy footsteps and a low, guttural sound before catching a glimpse of a massive, shadowy figure disappearing between the trees.
Pretty much every day. I have been doing it for over 10 years, and around 11 o'clock one night, I had a road crossing. And I mean, it maybe took 2 or 3 steps, it was across the road, but I was within 40 feet of it. What struck me was the height of it. I mean, the thing must have been 8 to 8.5.
It was unlike any animal I've ever seen, he said. It moved with a strange, almost unnatural silence, but its size was impossible to miss. Stories like these raise questions about what might be lurking just beyond the edges of the known, and whether these encounters are connected. But that wasn't the only time something like this was seen. Another encounter, even darker, would soon follow. Flat Squatch Productions. Location: Western Pennsylvania. The secrets of Chestnut Ridge, rocks, howls, and the Bone Cave. In western Pennsylvania, along the rugged backbone of the Chestnut Ridge, the woods hold more than deer trails and hidden hollows. For decades, locals have whispered of strange lights, bone-chilling screams, and creatures that defy explanation. Few know this better than Dwayne, a man who has dedicated years to walking those ridges and listening to the night. His encounters read like a diary of the uncanny. The first encounter came in 2016 in Fayette County. Broad daylight, around 3:30 p.m. Dwayne was tracking signs along a fern-covered trail, documenting a massive 14-inch footprint, when something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a rock the size of a man's head flew past him, slamming into a nearby tree. Then came a scream, high, piercing, and powerful enough to shake the air itself. Like a woman screaming through concert speakers, he said. The sound rattled his chest. Instinct told him to run, but instead he charged uphill, hoping to see what made it. When he reached the ridge, the forest had gone dead silent. No movement, no wind, just the fading echo of that impossible scream.
So I thought I'd go back up there and see if any new activity might have been along that trail. So I'm walking and I go to where that track's at, which had been, the rain had obscured it. It was gone. So I kept walking on down. I went from here to about where that bush is right there. And I'm in ferns that are up to here. And as I get about there was an opening area that was devoid of any ferns. And right there was an equal 14x7 track.
This wasn't an isolated case. 4 years earlier, in 2012, just 5 miles from that same spot, Dwayne and 2 others were called to a family farm plagued by strange disturbances. Rocks were thrown near the father, dogs refused to go outside, and livestock acted terrified for weeks. That night, the team set up recorders by the property's fishing pond. For a while, everything was still, until a deep, guttural roar erupted from the ridge. It wasn't a coyote or a bear. The sound carried intelligence and anger. It froze us in place, Dwayne recalls. The frequency they later analyzed was unlike any known animal. Even more unsettling, when one of the men mimicked the noise, the creature answered back, closer each time, before retreating into the dark. But that night brought more than sound. Hovering above the high-tension power lines was a fiery orange orb, glowing silently, about 3 feet across. It glided along the lines, vanished into the trees, then reappeared minutes later before fading beyond the ridge. To Dwayne, it was no illusion. It was as real as the ground under my feet, he insists.
Up until this thing let out this bellowing, deep guttural bellowing growl, roar, And it just did what the scream did. It echoed across his farm, up on the ridge. I mean, we couldn't really tell exactly where it was coming from at first. And I'll send you the recording, because we luckily got some good recorded, and we run it through a audio spectrum analyzer, and we're able to.
Perhaps the most unsettling encounter came in March 2011, when Dwayne and his girlfriend discovered what locals later called the Bone Cave. At first, it looked like a shadow beneath a rock ledge, but inside lay scattered bones, deer, porcupines, foxes, even skulls arranged neatly on shelves of stone. Over the next 2 years, Dwayne's team found at least 4 deer carcasses dragged inside and stripped to bone. Whatever lived there wasn't passing through. It was feeding, storing, maybe even nesting. It felt like stepping into a horror film, he recalls, but it was real. Despite game cameras and repeated visits, they never caught what used the cave. Only the chilling evidence remained: piles of bones, stacked skulls, and the feeling of unseen eyes watching from the dark.
We walked closer, and I said, "Oh, that's an actual cave." I said, "It's an opening. There's something, we can go in it if it's possible." So we both carefully walked over to this opening, and sure enough, this opening was easily this high and this big. You could walk almost through it, just barely, like crouching down, you could walk through it. Well, the thing was, when you went through it, it dropped down, and then there was a rock precipice that went down about 20 feet, and you could see what looked like another cave opening.
Dwayne's stories of Chestnut Ridge weave together like threads in a larger mystery. Rocks hurled with impossible force, screams that split the air, roars recorded and analyzed but never explained, lights hovering above the treetops, and a cave that seemed to serve as both larder and lair for something far beyond a bear or cougar. For those who live in the shadow of the ridge, these aren't tales for campfires. They're warnings, whispered from one generation to the next.
Me and an ex-girlfriend were up there. I took her up because she had a fascination with Bigfoot. I wanted to show her the area that we had this activity happen. And while we were in the woods walking around like we're doing today, there's an outcrop rock mound formation, a big gathering of rocks in all kind of places, clusters of rocks, because it's a lot of sandstone rock and limestone rock formations in this area.
Because out here, when the sun dips and the ridges grow dark, you never truly know what's watching from the tree line. And if you're unlucky, or perhaps chosen, you might hear it scream. Footage, courtesy Documentary Vault. California, a name that conjures images of palm trees, beaches, and the glow of Hollywood. But far north of Los Angeles, the Golden Coast transforms into something entirely different. The land grows wild, the forests grow thicker, and the air grows still. Here, beyond the borders of comfort and civilization, lies the heart of the Bigfoot mystery, and perhaps the most haunting encounter ever told. In the remote regions surrounding Willow Creek and the Six Rivers National Forest, generations of locals have whispered the same story.
Pretty darn realistic. It's still not enough to prove that the creature is real. You know, for every person that believes that that's a real Bigfoot, there will be another who says that just looks like a man in an ape suit.
Hunters, loggers, and tribal elders all speak of a towering creature cloaked in dark hair, a shadow that watches from between the trees. They call it Sasquatch. The world knows it as Bigfoot. For centuries, the native tribes of Northern California, like the Hoopa, Karuk, and Yurok, spoke of a great hairy man that lived deep in the forest, a guardian spirit of nature, or a warning to those who wandered too far. Their legends weren't meant to frighten children. They were recollections, warnings passed down from people who saw something. Then came the modern encounters. In 1958, while construction crews were building a logging road near Bluff Creek, they discovered massive human-like footprints in the soft soil.
Watershed and the area where the film was shot, the famous footprint finds and stuff.
Each nearly 16 inches long. The workers laughed it off at first, until their tractors began to move on their own. Heavy machinery, weighing hundreds of pounds, was found pushed deep into the forest overnight. The men quit the job, and that's when the word Bigfoot first made headlines. locals began reporting sightings. A man fishing by Indian Creek saw a tall, dark figure kneeling by the water, scooping up water in its hands. Another resident described waking in the night to the sound of thunderous footsteps shaking the ground outside his cabin. "It wasn't a bear," he said. "It didn't sound like a deer. It sounded like something walking, something heavy." But what makes this story truly haunting isn't just the footprints or the strange noises. It's the testimonies that came decades later, calm, sincere, from people who had nothing to gain by speaking. One woman recalled driving home late at night when a massive silhouette stepped out from the redwoods and crossed the dirt road in front of her. "It moved like a man, but taller," she said, "and when it turned its head, I could see the shine of its eyes." Others claim to have found elk carcasses with their heads twisted completely off, acts of strength no known predator could achieve.
And I stood on the flat area above where the main bedding area goes. It slopes. It's on the slope down the mountainside.
Bob Schmitzbach, a retired engineer and researcher from the nearby town of Happy Camp, spent years documenting these stories. He used thermal images and night vision, collecting evidence that defied explanation. "I've seen them watching me while I was photographing footprints," he said. "They're cautious. Smarter than we think." For every skeptic, there's a believer who swears by what they've seen. Even park rangers, biologists, and professors have quietly admitted that something out there doesn't fit into science's neat boxes. Dr. Matthew Johnson, a family man and respected psychologist, once described seeing a massive upright figure while hiking with his wife and children. "When I saw it," he said, "everything I knew about the outdoors came crashing down. I just wanted to protect my family." And perhaps that's the truth hidden within these encounters. For all the myths, photos, and shaky footage, what stays with you are the voices, the emotion in their tone, the tremor in their words. These aren't actors. These are people reliving moments that changed how they saw the world. Today, Willow Creek stands as the unofficial capital of Bigfoot country.
And it turns out that now that I've been here and got to talk to people here, there have probably been 15 or 20 sightings at this point. If you stop here for a second and just listen, all you can hear is the river. You don't hear cars, you don't hear trains, you don't hear buses, you just hear the river.
Its museums display casts of enormous footprints. Its locals share stories that span generations. Whether the creature is a relic of an ancient species, a spirit guarding the wild, or something entirely unknown, the mystery endures. In the silence of those forests, where the fog hangs low and the rivers echo through the valleys, there's a presence that never truly leaves. And for the people who've seen it, who've felt the weight of its gaze, California isn't just the land of sunshine anymore. It's the land where myth steps into reality, where one haunting encounter can change everything you believe. Footage courtesy Eric K. Swanson, documentaries. Location Kinderhook, New York. Nestled in the heart of New York's Hudson Valley, the small town of Kinderhook carries a quiet charm. Colonial homes, winding country roads, and the legacy of Washington Irving, who wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow just miles away. But beneath that calm exterior lies a darker tale. For decades, whispers have circulated about strange beings roaming the nearby swamps, creatures known only to locals as the Kinderhook creature. This chilling story begins in late 1979, when author and researcher Bruce G. Hallenbeck first learned of something unusual happening near his grandparents' property at a place called Cushing's Hill.
Kinderhook is a small town in New York's Hudson Valley. It's where Washington Irving wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's also home to some strange occurrences over the years, including the Hallenbeck family's encounters with the Kinderhook creature.
His cousin, out trapping muskrats one morning, came running to the house pale as a ghost. He claimed he had seen 3 creatures crossing the stream, tall, reddish-brown, walking upright, and making low grunting and clacking sounds. It was broad daylight. The family dismissed it at first until Bruce's grandmother revealed she had seen something strange the year before. A large figure curled up in her yard at dawn. When she returned moments later, it had vanished. She hadn't told anyone out of fear they'd think she was losing her mind. But now, with her grandson's story, the memory came rushing back. Soon after, odd things began happening around her home. Trash bags vanished from the porch, only to be found opened and scattered neatly across the yard, untied, not torn. One neighbor even found her rubbish hanging from a tree.
My cousin first saw some creatures down there in the swamp, and he said he saw 3 of them. And this was in the daytime. He said these 3 creatures were crossing the stream. He just said they had reddish-brown hair all over their bodies, and they were walking upright, and they were making like grunting and clacking sounds, he said.
Something intelligent, curious, and powerful was moving through Kinderhook's quiet woods at night. Then came the night of Bruce's own encounter. It was the summer of 1980 when an unearthly sound echoed through the forest. It started like a shriek, he said, then turned into guttural moans and ended in a deep, drawn-out howl. The sound was so loud it seemed to vibrate through the earth. Bruce knew it wasn't a coyote. He'd heard plenty before. Whatever it was beer and close. But the real terror came a few months later. September 24th, 1980, a night Bruce would never forget. His grandmother had just returned home when a horrific moan erupted near the old root cellar. It sounded like a man in unbearable pain. Bruce's cousin Sherry, sitting in the car, described it as ape-like. Panicked, the family locked the doors. Bruce's aunt fetched his cousin Barry and his shotgun. As she approached the house, she froze. A massive silhouette loomed in the moonlight, its arms long, its head oddly conical. Barry fired a warning shot into the air, but the sound only stirred the creature.
Fired the gun again, and this time he said flame came out of the barrel, and the thing screamed and ran off. And he thinks maybe it was the flame in the barrel that made it run. So by the time I got home, this had all been over for a few minutes.
It crashed through the brush, screaming, a chilling, human-like shriek that echoed for miles. Barry fired again. A flash of flame burst from the shotgun barrel, and the creature fled into the woods. It screamed like a girl, Bruce later recalled, and that was the last we ever heard of it. The family stood trembling in the aftermath, the night eerily silent once more. For hours, chaos filled the Hallenbeck home. The creature had been stalking the area for nearly an hour, watching, waiting. Bruce's grandmother said it was the worst sound she'd ever heard, like a person dying in agony. She believed it was the same voice she had heard months before. After that night, the activity ceased. No more howls, no more scattered trash. It was as if the creature had simply vanished. But Bruce never forgot the fear. The sense that something intelligent and ancient had brushed up against their world. Years later, he documented the entire ordeal in his book, The Kinderhook Creature and Beyond, a personal reminiscence, hoping others might finally take the story seriously. It wasn't a bear, he said quietly. It wasn't a man either. Whatever it was, it knew we were there. Perhaps somewhere in the misty woods of Kinderhook, that same creature still roams, silent, unseen, and waiting for the next curious soul to cross its path. Footage, courtesy, Apparent Wind Expedition. Location, British Columbia. Deep in the wild forests of British Columbia, a team from the Apparent Wind Expedition set out to document the Kitasoo-Zaiksais First Nation. But what they found was far from ordinary. Locals spoke of something ancient, something real, Sasquatch. It began quietly. While unloading supplies along a forest trail, one of the men spotted movement, fast, powerful, and gone in seconds. Too tall for a man, too swift for a bear. He described it as nearly 9 feet tall, covered in dark hair, moving silently through the trees. Then the forest went still, unnaturally still, as if even nature was holding its breath. Back at camp, the talk spread quickly. Some of the elders had spoken of the Sasquatch before. Stories passed down through generations. They always said, not everyone gets to see one. Only a few are given that chance. For many, it was a tale of respect, not fear. But for the younger members who saw it with their own eyes, the experience was life-altering.
One thing that I have to admit from Clinton, I now absolutely 100% believe in Sasquatch. Heard a lot of stories about Sasquatch from the first time that we came up to Klimtu to when we left. Sasquatch is real.
I've never seen anything like move so fast before, that we talked about, it couldn't be a bear. It kind of felt a little bit like a little odd to see something, take off like that and not knowing what it is, and so it was pretty tall.
One of the men, still recovering from an injured hand, wasn't present when it happened. But when he returned, he could see the change in his friends, the mix of fear and awe.
I wasn't out here when it happened. I was out. I had to take some time off because I recently cut myself in my hand. Yeah, and so I had to take some time off for that because I couldn't close it properly. So, yeah, I heard it when I got back in, though. When I got here, though, I heard the stories.
Freaked out or excited? Or?
I seemed pretty freaked out, but at the same time excited. Like, I wanted to experience, too. I wanted that experience. So it'd be pretty cool.
You think it'll happen?
Hopefully.
Then came the most detailed testimony. 2 men, Matthew and Spencer, had been dropped off for a 2-day stay. While unloading supplies, Spencer saw a dark figure dart across a clearing. Matthew looked up and caught it too, describing how it took only 3 steps before vanishing into the forest. They heard a tree snap, followed by an overwhelming stench, like rotting flesh. The smell was so strong it burned their noses. They had no fire going, yet the air was thick with decay. Matthew told his friend to start a fire and play music, hoping the sound would keep whatever it was at a distance. That night, as the fire crackled, something moved around the camp. Heavy steps, 2 feet, then a low growl that carried through the darkness. The next morning, they found clear evidence. Large footprints near the camp. Knocks on wood, 3 times, answered by 3 knocks in return. It wasn't random, it was communication. The men didn't panic. Instead, they quietly packed up and waited for their boat. One of them later said, "It's not something to fear. My family told me that when it shows itself, it's a message. Something meant for you to feel."
Me and Matthew did experience some Sasquatch. Matthew, he kept me calm and all that. We were out here for 2 days, and right when we got dropped off, Spencer and Matthew were already up here and all that. And literally just right behind us, in that clearing there, Spencer was standing there, and he saw black figure run.
A 4th witness, an elderly craftsman, recalled the night with eerie calm. "It was fresh," he said. "Everyone's still talking about it." It wasn't his first encounter, but it was the most vivid. The first sign was the smell, so strong it burned his nostrils. "What is that?" he asked his co-worker, who smelled it too. Moments later, the black bear that normally passed their camp changed its path completely, hugging the shoreline and refusing to look toward them. That's when he knew something was wrong. Then came the sounds. Heavy footsteps circling the camp, brushing against the yurt walls nearly 10 feet high. Later, massive branches snapped in the dark, followed by deep, rhythmic grunts. It would take a few steps, stop, grunt, then move again, until dawn. When morning came, they stepped outside and froze. Right beneath the window was a massive footprint, long, narrow, with defined toes and heel. Not a bear's. Whatever it was, it had stood there, watching them through the night.
It's fresh. It's fresh. My opinion is that they are real. This is the second time I've encountered one. I smelt it right away. It's real pungent smell, it's really burn your nostrils, bad smell.
The elder said the morning that followed was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no squirrels, no seagulls, nothing. It was absolute silence. He knocked on a nearby tree 3 times. Instantly, 3 knocks answered back from the distance. It wasn't random, it was aware, intelligent, deliberate.
You wake up to birds, squirrels, you wake up to the squirrels, or you wake up to the seagulls even. One morning I woke up to the killer whales out here. But this morning it was dead silent. I I got a stick and I knocked on the tree like I knocked 3 times. I got immediate response, three knocks back, and it wasn't too far from us. So like it was just walking away from the camp kind of deal. That was my second encounter with one.
Through it all, he said he never felt fear. Startled, yes.
Not once during that whole encounter did I feel threatened or fear. I wasn't scared. It's quite the experience, so. Startled a couple of times, but not scared. Anyway, I was safe the whole time.
But never be afraid. I was taught to respect them. If you don't bother them, they won't bother you. His calmness contrasted sharply with the eerie stillness that had followed. For the Kitasu Zaiksais, these events reaffirmed an ancient belief that Sasquatch isn't just a creature of folklore but a guardian of the forest, existing long before humans ever walked these lands. To them, the encounter wasn't just haunting, it was sacred. As the forest falls silent once more, the question remains: did we catch a glimpse of the elusive Bigfoot, or is it just a story told in the shadows? Whatever the truth, the legend lives on, inspiring wonder and curiosity. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your mind ready, for the unknown is never far away. The legend of Bigfoot continues to captivate us, reminding us that some mysteries are meant to live on,